Robert, you'll let me know when either Brad or Keisha come, and we have a few more minutes, and there's probably more people coming.
Yeah, I'll let you know when Keisha or Brad joins.
Okay, I sent you 2 pictures. And Rebecca and Wilma are not here yet. I don't see Will. Robert, do you hear me?
I do. I see Rebecca here. I just got your
I'm
emails,
here.
Barbara. Sorry, Rebecca, didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. I'm here. I'm just getting ready.
Barbara, we just had Brad join us.
Hello.
Hi, Brad. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I was just going to call Rebecca. Somehow I got muted. Hi, Brad. Thanks for coming. I think Keisha from the Borough President's Office may come, and there should be a few more people. I know several people said they were coming. So can we wait another few minutes? Would you
Sure.
mind?
No, not at all.
Okay. I haven't seen you in a long time, Brad. I used to see you on the campaign trails or whatever. So today is probably maybe a slightly different conversation than it would have been yesterday, right?
Well,
And every day I say that, actually.
yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly it was the most substantive meeting they've had, and a lot of stuff is coming down.
But you'll tell us. And I sent Robert 2 pictures I may want to share of one of my unfavorite shops on 2nd Avenue, all neon. And I went in to say, oh, do you sell cannabis? And I guess that it looked so uncool that she didn't believe I really wanted.
They told you no?
Well, she sort of mumbled, and they said yes. And then I gather you can buy $60 worth of goods and then get them. Can't you believe I want it?
And Barbara and Rebecca, we also have Keisha here too.
Oh, Keisha's here too. Oh, thank you, Keisha. How many people do we have? Should we
11.
wait? Do you know are other people logging in?
That's up to you guys. We can give it an extra minute if you guys want to.
Okay, let's give it a couple more minutes. And Wilma's not on yet, is she?
I am not seeing her
I'm
name
gonna make
or
a
the
call
phone.
and see if she's having problems or what's going on with her. So give me 1 second and see. Are you coming on? Okay, great. Okay, okay. Then come on. Okay, bye-bye. She'll be on soon. She had an appointment. Whenever you think that everybody's signed in, we can get started. So it'd be up to you, Robert.
Do you want me to wait to read the spiel before Wilma gets here?
Yeah,
Or do you
she doesn't need the spiel.
Okay.
She's heard it once or twice before. Okay, do you want to get started with it then, Robert? And we
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
sure.
Thank you all for joining us this evening, and welcome to CB8's Health Senior Social Services Committee meeting. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout the meeting except the committee co-chairs, Rebecca, Wilma, and Barbara, and the presenters. Following the presentation, co-chairs will call members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon, pressing raise hand, not the wave or the thumbs up. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're on the phone, it is *9 to raise hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm your unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs or the presenters. They will not see these chats. If you have an older version of Zoom, you need to go to the participant section where you will find the raise hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat me, I'm here for support.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, and welcome to the Health Senior Social Services Committee of Community Board 8. We're a very committee that we talk about lots of different things, and one thing that we agreed we should explore a while ago is what is legal and what not in selling cannabis, in buying it, and so on. And as days went on, every day I said, oh boy, this is going to be a different meeting. And certainly today, if anybody listened to the news, there was a lot going on with it. I have a million questions, so I assume everybody on does also. And we're so pleased. We have two people, one from the state. Brad Usher is the chief of staff with Liz Kruger. I'm right about that, Brad, right? That's your Liz Kruger's office, our state senator. And we're so pleased to have from Mark Levine, our borough president's office, Keisha Sutton James, who is the deputy chief of staff. Is that right? I think that's right. But you'll correct me if I'm not right about the exact title, who some of us might have seen when if you listen to the leadership meetings on cannabis. I came away with my head splitting, and I hope that Keisha would be able to help us along the way. So Keisha would talk about some of the city issues, and Brad would talk about the state, and so much is happening on state, if that's okay. Now, before I just want to say thank you to all that helped so much. Will is our district manager, is so helpful. And Robert, thank you so much for all that you do and continue doing. We also have this joint with the Street Life Committee. It wasn't listed, but it is because we think, and our Brad and Keisha will tell us, that some of the sellers will have, just like liquor stores or people that sell liquor, those that sell marijuana will have to go through the SLA, which means it will come to our Street Life Committee. But we'll get clarification about that. So thank you, everybody. And Brad, do you want to start on the state level and then Keisha will on the city? Would that be okay?
Sure, and I'll try not to there are some overlaps between state and city, especially with the issues of enforcement. But I'll talk about what the state
Okay. I'm just going to
And-
say for myself, if I hear it twice, it won't be wasted.
Okay.
Find it very
Okay.
difficult.
Yeah, I think we'll probably be approaching it from slightly different angles, but certainly, the first thing I'll start with is, to the extent that any place right now is selling cannabis, as in not CBD products, but actual cannabis with THC content above a certain level, which is that is not legal, and those stores are not legal. But enforcing against them has been a problem for both the state and the city, and they've been sort of working on strategies to do that. And I think I'll talk mainly about the state, other than to say that city agencies like Department of Consumer and Worker Protection have been helpful in trying to enforce some city rules around this stuff as well. The issue for the state is that it's been hard for the Office of Cannabis Management to regulate these stores as they might like, because their scope is too narrow, in that their job right now is to regulate licensed establishments, and there aren't any licensed establishments. And originally the legislation was structured that tax and finance would be going after folks that were selling untaxed cannabis, sort of like they go after untaxed cigarettes. And but they have been not successful in doing that. And one of the things that we're working on that is, Senator Krueger did introduce legislation that would both clarify powers of tax and finance, expand powers of the Office of Cannabis Management, and include some new criminal penalties for retail sale of cannabis outside of the regulated structure, aimed at going after these stores, not necessarily folks that have been selling, on the legacy market for years. But that bill passed the Senate, but not the Assembly. But there have been significant discussions of that legislation between OCM and the Assembly, the Office of Cannabis Management, and my understanding is that it's something that we are hopeful can pass early next session. And that's a good transition to what happened today, because there are multiple reasons not to like the stores that are selling now. They're not subject to all the regulations about not selling, not having child-friendly advertisement, not having the sign, the kind of street presence that, Barbara, you pointed out some of these stores have in terms of signage, and generally they're selling products that are not subject to, that have not been evaluated by the Office of Cannabis Management. They're often selling products from other states. That's one reason that these places are a problem. The other reason is, to the extent that we don't get them under control, they will pose a threat to the market that we are trying to develop, which will have all these rules. And therefore, if we have a bunch of stores operating without these rules, they will have an advantage. So we need to make sure that the stores that are following the rules are protected from that. And also the stores that are going to be coming online through what's called the card provisional licenses, of which I think 37 were approved today, and some of those will, I think 2 of them are in Manhattan, although locations are not set yet. Those
We'll explain what that means, what card means, right?
Oh, card is conditional conditional adult use retail dispensary. That's it. And so these are this is a small group of preliminary licenses, and there'll be, I think, up to 150 once these throughout the state, once that piece of the program is up and running. And they have been specifically targeted at people who have faced criminal penalties because of the drug war. So we're trying to provide them a route into the legal market, but they also have to have a demonstrated record of success as a small business, because we also want these folks to succeed. So we want to make sure that we're picking winners, as it were, and businesses that can succeed, and they're going to have access to both assistance and literally leases that the state will do for them on locations, but also technical assistance, access to capital, and other resources that will be necessary for them to build out these stores. And that is what the legal market will look like when it first comes online, probably very, very late this year and into early next year. Those were approved today. And you mentioned the role of the community board. Another thing that was announced, was released today, is something called the notice to municipalities, which is whenever any establishment is going, if I'm going to open a cannabis business on 86th Street, I will have to send to the municipality, and in New York City, that's the community board, is effectively the municipality, an announcement of that. I sent it, I think, to the OCM, and the community board gets informed and then will be in a position to take a position on whether or not that is an appropriate location. And they will weigh in, and it's similar to the SLA process, where it's not, you can't veto them, but you can say why a location is inappropriate, and the Office of Cannabis Management has to respond to whatever position is taken by the local board. The other thing to know is that the law, like the cannabis law, like the alcohol or the liquor license law, bans these establishments within 500 feet of a school or 200 feet of a church. So you'll have similar rules where those locations are prohibited off the top. That's not even all you. If the community board thinks it's within that location, they should reach out to OCM and say this is not a legitimate establishment. They don't even need to weigh in. I think other reasons why a location may be appropriate or inappropriate are things that the board could raise. I think a board that tries to ban these on a blanket, they're banning them altogether will violate the terms of the law, which say you have to provide some opportunities, but localities are allowed to regulate time, place, and manner in a way that make sure these are not an undue burden on the community. So, for instance, having that there were too many in a particular area would be the kind of thing that would probably have significant weight with OCM. So I'm sure I haven't answered anywhere near all your questions, but I think I'll stop and maybe turn it over to Keisha if that's what you want to have happen next, and then we can go
Sure,
to
and then we
questions.
probably have lots of questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. Keisha?
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight, and thank you for
Thank you.
for bringing up the topic and diving into it. I frankly feel like I don't know what else I can add to it because Brad covered a lot, and probably most of it. Brad, I really felt like, I think the only other thing that I would add is that on the enforcement side, as Brad said, there are no legal adult use recreational dispensaries right now. So all the trucks that we see, and unless it is a medical marijuana a site, which I would have to check, but I don't believe there are any at the location that you mentioned, then it's illegal. And
CB8, there's none in CB8 is what you're saying?
On 90th and 2nd-ish, which is
No, we're talking about, what about all of
oh,
them?
CB8. Yeah. I don't think there are in CB8 at all, but I can check. I know most of them are in Midtown. So I don't want to say that there are definitely not any. I just don't think that there are. And Brad is giving me a.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure either, but the ones that I can identify are south of Community Board 8.
Exactly. So the only other thing I would add is that Brad discussed some of the enforcement efforts that have been in place. I know that they've also been looking at for the trucks, looking at other kind of violations so that they can tow the trucks. And I know that there have been a number of situations where trucks have been impounded because of a certain number of parking tickets or some other violation. And that there is an email that I'll put in the chat right now, but there is an enforcement email to invite OCM to investigate any businesses that you know of that are that you suspect are not legitimate. So I'm going to put that in the chat now. And other than that, though, I mean, it's pretty straightforward that, and I want to make sure that people are really clear on the thing that Brad said at the top, which is that there are no legal recreational use dispensaries right now. The card license, the conditional adult use recreational dispensary license, they just today released some of the names. I think there will be total about 175 in New York State. And those names are being released shortly. I should flag that because those are, that entire citing process is being managed by DASNY, the Dormitory Authority. As I have understood it, there is not a role for the community board in the citing of these conditional adult use dispensary licenses. It will be when the 9 MRTA is the marijuana, what is the R? I'm blanking right now, Brad.
Regulation.
Regulation, thank you. My gosh. The name of the law that passed at the end of March 2021. There in MRTA, there are 9 licenses that are part of that. In those 9 licenses, that's where the community boards or the municipalities will have a role to play, that the role that Brad just outlined. But in card, there isn't a role to play. At least there was not. Brad, I have not gotten the full update on what happened today. I've been out.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm a little unclear about that because I'm on the website and it does have the notification it does, under the card license, it does have the notification to municipalities. So I would hope that they would require that. It is a special license, so I think that they might argue they don't have to, but it's literally, it's down there. So I think they are going to have to.
Okay, that's new. That's new because what they had been saying to us, and I did a call last week, what they had been saying to us all along was that because DASNY is citing them, and it's not one of the 9 licenses that are part of MRTA, that essentially there wasn't a requirement. And so we were pushing to involve the community boards in some way. So I'm glad to hear that I to be perfectly frank and transparent, you saw me in a taxi on the way home. I've been out, doing turkey things all day long. So I haven't gotten the full update. So I apologize. And
and I'm reading between the lines, so I could be wrong. It's just where it's positioned on the website makes me think, because it's under the card license, but when you read the description on the page, it sounds more like what you're saying. So,
and
right.
I think, because it's all so new at this point. So basically there's 2 types of licenses, only 2. I thought when I went to leadership, there was more. There's the one that will be given for those that were incarcerated, and then there will be others that would be given to anybody.
There are 9 others.
Only 9 throughout the whole New York State?
No, I mean, there are different there are 2 kinds of, well, there's 3 kinds of retail licenses.
Okay.
There's the card license, there's the adult use retail, and then actually I can come up with more too. There's delivery, which they're not issuing yet, which would, except for the adult use retail, have the ability to deliver. And then there's also an on-premises license, which they also haven't released yet. So the only one that's going for retail that's going out right now is the card license. but you will later on have a broader group of adult use retail. You will also have, and you will also potentially have micro business licenses, which can have a retail component. I think those are they can actually produce their own product and sell it. I actually don't think that they would be likely to be located in Community Board 8, because it's hard for me to imagine where you would be growing it in Community Board 8 in a way that would pass muster. So, but
The green roofs that they keep asking for, maybe. Could be. Okay, so I just want to ask again before we open it up. So there's the card that are for those that were incarcerated. There's, I think I counted 18 in Manhattan, if I counted correctly. And then there's going to be those that are just open to any retailer that will sell just for recreation use. And can you explain how they would get the license? And those are only 9?
No, there's the nine licenses that's including types of licenses like producer.
Oh, so there's 9 licenses,
Yes,
not 9.
We have no idea how many overall adult use retail cannabis establishments there will be. There will be today at the board meeting, they released the preliminary regulations for the adult use cannabis market. Or the adult use cannabis retail license. So that process is just, there's I think a 60-day comment period followed by a release of the new the revised regs, followed by another 45-day comment period. So those licenses are not likely to be even applied for until, I would say, the second quarter of 2023. At that point, and those licenses also have a major social equity component. So they're broader eligibility than the card licenses, but they're still going to prioritize social equity applicants who have been directly impacted by the drug war or come from communities that have been impacted by the drug war, as well as disabled veterans, women. There's different categories and different tiers of eligibility. And a license under that program, one licensee could have up to 3 locations. Again, the goal is to keep this from being a concentrated industry, and also they cannot be vertically integrated. They cannot produce or process cannabis. Those are separate licenses. But and those will all go through a much more standard SLA process. I think the open question is how exactly they're handling the notification to municipalities on the card licenses.
And the other recreational retailers, not the growers, not the farmers, but the retailers, there are more than those 2?
Well, so there's a retail you can think of a retail adult use retail license as like a liquor store. There will also be licenses for on-premises consumption.
So maybe at the bar you could also buy.
Yeah, except you can't. It would be a cannabis-only bar because you can't mix cannabis and alcohol under the law.
Okay.
But theoretically, an establishment could apply for that, though that license, the regs have not been issued, so those are going to be even further down the line. And then there are some limited delivery licenses independent of the retailers who will have the ability to deliver, where a very small business, because there are employee limitations on these, could run a delivery service. The goal here is also to ensure we don't end up with the Amazon or what's one of the food delivery services, the Uber cannabis delivery.
Uber Eats, right? And one more, okay, I'm not going to ask. I'll wait until the end. I have a million questions.
Okay.
Should we start taking questions from the audience, from the public, and then are you ready for that, or do you have, Keisha? We can start asking questions at this point, right, Keisha? Rebecca, do you want to start calling on people?
All right, we're going to start with members of the public. Apologies if I mispronounce your name. Tisha or Taisha, can we unmute her first?
Hi, you said my name right the first time, Tisha. Thank you.
Okay, yay.
Well, I thank y'all for sharing this information. And I don't want to keep beating, a dead horse, so to speak, but I just want clarity. And forgive me for coming in late. So as of today, New York has chosen who is going to legally sell marijuana as a dispensary or a store. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've chosen the first 37, I think, stores throughout the state. So it's a small percentage of who will be doing it late, 2 to 5 years from now, but it's the beginning of the legal cannabis market.
So all of the trucks and stores that already have been selling has not been licensed.
That is correct. If they are selling cannabis as in a THC-based product as opposed to CBD, then that they are not legal. And also, to be clear, even if they're selling CBD, they are supposed to be licensed by the state through the Office of Cannabis Management. And if they do not have a license, they are subject to enforcement action as well.
The last thing is a comment. I just, as a mother and also as a community member, my concern is what I'm seeing as far not so much the cannabis stores, but before communities of color felt targeted by having liquor stores, a surplus of liquor stores in the community. And now I'm seeing a surplus of smoke shops where you can find bongs and all kind of different papers and things and vapes and places to buy this. And I'm seeing a lot of young people, and I'm talking about young people under the age of 18, come into these stores and buy this stuff. Also, the edibles. I just hope that I feel, confident that New York will be the front runner in our nation as far as responsibility and accountability to these dispensaries and stores. But what can we do as a community to keep our kids safe, even when they're not going to make the right decision? And Barbara, thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. Great. Thank you, Tisha. We had a long conversation that got heated sometimes about this. So thank you for coming.
So Tisha, I don't know where you went. There you are. Sorry. I just wanted to say I grew up and live in Harlem and totally agree. And in terms of the experience of the liquor stores and also the smoke shops, although I will say I find these smoke shops and the trucks are everywhere right now. I dropped in the chat the enforcement email. I encourage everyone to use it. And you ask what you can do. That's what you can do as an individual, not just as a community board, but as an individual. When you see a truck or smoke shop that, well, right now, they must be illegal. And it will be several months before this many, probably even the card licenses, as they are released, they will be coming on, they will be actually cited, next year, but it will probably be many months because it takes time to secure leases and product and all the things. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that for most of next year, you will, most of what you'll see will also be illegal. So feel free to use that email address. And then OCM will investigate from there. And that is the route that for now, that's what we have for now in terms of enforcement. I'll also just add to what Brad said about the protections and the reasons, the benefits of the regulated market, in addition to, the appropriate labeling, understanding what it is that you're buying, having packaging that is not, I forgot, it's not called child proof. It's resistant, or I forgot what the name of the labeling of the packaging is, but it makes it harder for, not only is it less appealing to younger people, but harder for them to get into it. But in addition to that, the reason that, part of the reason that this is the part of the part of the regulation is really focused on raising the tax revenue in order to reinvest in communities. And so if people are not buying from regulated legal sellers, then that's tax revenue that's also, going uncaptured. And that what that means is it's less revenue going to serve communities that need the services. And those services will be coming in the form of drug treatment and education and other kinds of programs. So it's, again, I encourage you to call the enforcement, or rather to use the enforcement email for now, because that's what we have. And perhaps work together to ensure that everyone that you see is being addressed. That's one thing I just wanted to hop in to say. I don't know if Brad, you had anything else you wanted to add in terms of.
Yeah, I would reinforce the idea that OCM needs to know about all these places, and it's going to take some time for them to shut them down. But OCM is very interested in shutting these places down. And that's why they came to us and said, we need you to pass this law to make it easier for us to shut them down, which hopefully the Senate and Assembly will do very early next session, because for the legal market to function, these places are a problem, and they're a problem for kids, because we're making sure, we put a lot of work in the bill to make sure that the legal market was not targeting kids, and that means we need to make sure that this gray market that we have now is not providing an alternative for them.
To speak to another concern you raised about, the youth, I wonder if either of you could talk about the actual legal age required to purchase any type of product. And then also, I think I would love to hear anything about plans to coordinate ensuring IDs are being asked for. I think this community in particular and all throughout New York City faced great difficulty with all of the smoke shops not IDing young people. I actually think this is one of the topics I brought up the first time I applied to the community board. Was, we were promised this huge coordinated effort to ensure that no one under the age of 21 was purchasing tobacco products, and yet there was only, I think, one warning letter or fine sent to a single smoke shop in our district. So I was wondering if either of you could respond to that side.
Well, I can respond on the legal market. When the legal stores are open, the age is 20. Well, the age period is 21, but that's what they're going to be selling, and it is modeled more on the ABC law and the fact that these folks are licensed and can lose their license, and selling to minors is a very serious offense under the OCM. So it's the stick in this case for sale to minors is loss of license. Now that obviously will require enforcement actions, stings, and that's one thing that has been happening with some of these gray market stores, is there have been some stings against them. And if they can bring a minor in and get them to buy, it's a lot easier to shut them down, because selling to a minor is actually is a much bigger crime than anything else under the law. So, certainly the city enforcement of the smoke shop law is separate, but obviously OCM will be very focused on sales of cannabis, and I think is looking at the ABC law and the way we do it with alcohol, which isn't perfect, but is, I think, more effective than some of the other efforts with tobacco.
Rebecca,
Great.
there's no more. I have a million, so whenever everybody else is done.
All right, so we have a couple more hands.
Great.
And quickly, before we move on, you recommend if any community member is concerned about the selling of products to people under the age of 21, they should email the email address in the chat, or is there a different?
I would
person
email that.
or
I mean,
place
if there's a
contact?
specific store that you are convinced is doing that, it doesn't hurt to reach out to the police as well. And you can CC, I'll put my email in here. You can CC me on any of these things. I guess I can email Robert and Robert can email everybody else.
Right.
That,
So we'll,
you know, just because with those kinds of things, it's often going to be, particularly for the illegal stores, that's often going to involve the police. And we did have a meeting with OCM and the 19th precinct back in April about some of these issues. And they were actually saying that, you know, they focusing on targeting stores that are selling to youth is one of the things they're really trying to work on.
so we'll definitely include all of those areas of contact in the minutes. So hopefully that
Good.
will help alleviate some concerns. Next, let's go to Stephanie Reckler.
Stephanie, you should see a prompt confirming you.
Okay. I am very naive about marijuana. I'll tell you, I've never used it. So I don't really know what I'm looking at. There's a store on 77th Street and Lexington Avenue. You've said that there's no legal adult use dispensaries currently. Is that correct? I think that's what you said.
Yes.
So the store is, I forget the exact name, but it's called a convenience store. I walked in and they're selling things in grams. I would imagine that is not, I would imagine that it's marijuana.
That sounds likely.
Right. That's what I imagine. It's across the street from the Alan Stevenson School. So I would think that even if they get a license, they can't get a license if they're across from a school. Is that
Nope.
correct?
That is correct.
All right. They're definitely selling CBD products. How can we tell if they have a license to do that?
Well, there's two things I'd say. One is if they have a license, I would email enforcement@ocm.gov because they're the ones who issue CBD licenses as well. Now, CBD is not technically illegal to be sold across from a school. I think unless you can't smell smokable products within a distance of a school. But if they are, but they could well be selling CBD without a license. Plenty of people are doing that. And the grams sound like cannabis, THC-based cannabis to me. So
I'm going to interrupt to say I was in Rebecca Seawright's office speaking. I forget who I was speaking, but he said that's exactly the place he talked about. There's evidently barrels, and he knew it was pot. Stephanie, he was more.
And he knew it was what I missed that.
What?
I missed what you said.
He knew it was pot, and I was going to
Oh.
say he was obviously more with it than you are, Stephanie. But anyway, that's a joke.
All right. So
He said it was definitely pot. So what you're saying is right.
I will notify the OCM.
and just get the street address. That's helpful.
Okay, no problem. All right. Thank you.
Or call Rebecca's office and they'll know it because he knew what it was, is the other thing to do.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
All right, next let's call on, actually, let's go to Abraham and then we'll go back to Ellen because he's a co-chair. Oh, I see Kevin Rogers from Assembly Member C. Wright's office is
Kevin.
raising.
Yes.
I'll defer to Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, folks. Yeah, I was just listening. Yeah. So there's a convenience store on 77th and Lex that is selling marijuana. They actually have containers in the back where if you pay $30, you can get a vial filled up and whatever. And I'm assuming they're not registered for it. They don't have a license for it. So that's just one of, I'm sure, many places that I'm sure is eligible for a complaint to be made.
Thank you for coming, Kevin.
Sure, of course.
Let's go to Abraham and then we'll go to Ellen.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. So Brad, I just wanted to reiterate, because I know there was a little uncertainty as to whether or not the municipality involvement was under the kind of the card licensing. I did notice that with regards to the regulations that came out today, that there is a 60-day public comment period. Is that correct?
That is on the, so the card license comment period already happened. The 60-day card license comment period is on the adult retail dispensary licenses, which are not the conditional adult dispensary licenses. Yeah, this is something I will try to get clarification from OCM from, and I gather Keisha will be too, because she's had conversations with them. I am just reading, when I go to their website, there is on the licensing page, under the conditional adult use retail dispensary, there is the notification to municipalities form. But when I read the description on that form, it references other licenses. So that is why I'm trying to read between the lines. So I'll try to get a definitive answer on that.
Okay, thank you very much. So then the 60-day comment period is for the adult use retail. So if there was any other considerations or input we wanted, this would be the window.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, okay, that's good to know. And I think maybe Rebecca,
We'll work on it.
that's something we can highlight to the board if there's anything else that we wanted to kind of like chime in on or kind of
Great.
submit.
Abraham is the chair of the Street Life Committee. Thank you, Abraham, for coming.
Yeah, so I suspect.
And I think,
go ahead, Rebecca.
so I think maybe after we finish the kind of public and board member Q&A, we can maybe talk a little bit about how we want to coordinate as committees as we deal with this in the future. So with that, let's go to Ellen.
Hi, everybody. So we've talked about the licensing requirement. I'm just wondering what is being done to make sure that there's no fentanyl or any other I don't know what you call it.
Bad stuff.
Any other negative chemicals in the marijuana, and I'm assuming it's more likely that some of the unlicensed places are selling doctored stuff. And is that a real danger for people buying from these unlicensed places, that they could be getting something laced with fentanyl?
I would say it's certainly a vastly bigger danger than it will be from the legal program, because everything through the legal program has to be tested, labeled, and there's a significant, they just actually issued a bunch of testing licenses today. That was another piece of the business at the meeting, where if you're going to sell cannabis at a legal store, it's going to have gone through testing and certainly is not going to be laced with anything. The fake stores are, some of them may be selling, some of them are selling products that are literally packaged from other states. So you shouldn't buy any of them, but those products are probably somewhat safer than if you're buying just loose cannabis. But I think that's a danger. Anybody buying cannabis through the illicit market, it doesn't know 100% for sure what they're going to get. Certainly, I've not heard any stories to indicate that these stores are posing that kind of great threat, but that's one reason you want to have a regulated market where everybody knows what they're buying, knows what the level of THC is in it, knows how much they should be taking so they don't overdose, those kinds of things. So yeah.
Is that the same thing with CBD?
CBD, CBD is also labeled and regulated. CBD does not make you high, and I've never heard of anybody putting fentanyl in CBD. It just doesn't really make sense. It's not the purpose, but again, you want a regulated product where you know what you're getting. So buying CBD from a regulated and that actually was a big problem with CBD is until we passed this bill, there was no regulation for CBD. It was a legal product to sell, but there was not really on
the topic of CBD, do they have CBD smokable?
I think there are smokable forms of CBD.
Okay, because I know of a store that's selling CBD products, but as far as I know, they're not selling marijuana.
Yeah, and again, if they are selling CBD products, they're also supposed to be licensed by OCM.
Okay.
So if they're not licensed by OCM, then that's a problem, and that's another kind of thing to enforce. If you can to send to enforcement, if you know for sure that they're not, but I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure. I think there should be a license posted, but I'm not sure exactly how easy those are to see.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I mean, I don't know if I would have the guts to walk in and say, "Are you licensed?" or "Can I see your license?"
Yeah, I mean, again, if you send me an address, if you're concerned about a location, send me an address and I can ask OCM if they're licensed.
Okay. All right, great.
So
Thank
just to follow up on that question, because I think it takes us to a great topic, which is, obviously there are many reasons to legalize certain things, but a big one is for that very regulation, so exactly, what you're using. And I'm wondering if you could speak to any requirements that licensed establishments have of, posting that they're licensed. Does their license need to be kind of at the, visible to all patrons? I don't know if either of you could speak to that.
I can look into, I do not actually know what off the top of my head, if there are specific posting requirements. I think actually my guess is that's going to be in the regs. So let me look at the regs and I'll try to get back to you with some clarification. If I can't figure it out, I'll ask OCM.
Thanks. That's great. I think that would be a good thing for us to let the community know about.
Okay, Rebecca.
I don't see any other hands, so I think I want to turn it over to Barbara.
I have several questions.
Have
some of them you've been answering, but I will go on with the licensee. It was one I was going to ask about. Isn't there some way that we can have more visible up front so that I would know I'm walking into a legalized store? Isn't there something we can do to say, this is an approved store?
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, just from a conversation I had with some folks at OCM, they are very focused on branding of the legitimate stores. So it is I don't know where it is in the regs, but I'm fairly confident that these stores are going to be very easily identifiable. And part of it is just branding that you're buying from a store where you know what you're getting, and also that is part of the state program. I think there's going to be social equity branding as well. So figuring out what exactly that looks like, and I'm not sure that OCM knows yet, but that I do expect that that's going to be a piece of it, and I'll look through the regs for that, because I'm guessing there's something like that in there.
Thank you. That would be good. Another question I have. There are some things that I think are, quote, legal, at least, so my experience, and maybe Robert, you can even show, there is a store on 2nd Avenue, about 89th to 90th Street, total neon. It looks like a candy store. If every kid isn't attracted to the store, I'd be surprised. And the name of the store is Cannabis. So I did walk in and I said, do you sell cannabis? And they said, yes. And I said, is it legal? They said, yes. And I said, okay, I'd like to buy some. And they said, oh, you can't, you have to spend $60. So I guess you spend $60 on buying paper and whatever else you spend it on, and they give you a goodie bag. This is the store. I'm a terrible photographer, but if that doesn't look like a fun store to go into, I don't know what does. And I mean, it's much more neon than you even are seeing here.
Yeah, so that is something that it is not legal to gift cannabis for someone who buys something else. There are definitely people who are trying to make that argument, but these folks are going to face the same consequences. I cannot go in and pay $60 for a t-shirt and then get a supply of cannabis. That is not legal.
So I would like to wonder if we could put pressure on landlords, because I would feel badly for this landlord. He rented the store and now we're going to hopefully kick this guy out. He's going to have an empty store. Is there any way we can make it plain to all landlords that don't rent to illegal people, because they're not going to last very long?
I would also, one area that we did have success on some other stores where we didn't get the store shut down, but we got their big ugly sign taken down. And the city, and Keisha may be more of an expert on this. I think it's through DWCP, but that's an illegal sign almost certainly.
Well, I was wondering, we should have had
it violates zoning.
Signs.
So, that doesn't solve the other problem, but it does. It does.
You're right, and it's the inside. It's total neon and like Alice in Wonderland type of look. Okay, I have other questions. One of the things that Isha, that I worried about with the leadership, it seemed like there were so many different departments dealing with it. I used to be co-chair of the Parks Committee and working on the Esplanade. And every time he said, can you fix this? Well, that's DOT. You go to DOT, that's Parks. You go to Parks, they say, well, that's the state. There was, until Carolyn Maloney actually said, no, Parks, you are taking it over, and some work started happening. We hear that so often. The vendor committee, you can go nuts hearing about how many different places to go depending upon the vendor. It worries me that we have too many departments that will be in charge and we won't know who to go. Is the cannabis management, the Office of Cannabis Management, the only place that will register, or will it be everybody pointing the fingers different ways? Who should
While we're
answer?
waiting for answers, I just want to flag for you, Barbara, we have 2 board members with their hands up, so we'll turn to them before.
Okay, well, let's just get this answer and then we'll do that.
So I'll just say really quickly, OCM is the regulator, and that is the only entity that is distributing and granting licenses. OCM
for all types of licenses.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Right.
OCM is partnering obviously with different agencies around enforcement, so there will be more agencies that are involved in terms from an enforcement perspective. But that's why from an enforcement perspective, why Brad and I were saying to contact OCM, because they will then look at the shop or the van in many cases and determine whether or not there is a legal license. If there is not, then they will work with local law enforcement to pursue an investigation and enforcement. But they know who is and isn't. But I totally agree with the assertion and suggestion that I Brad, thanks. I learned something from you tonight. I've learned, I'm sure, a lot of things, but what you were said about branding was very was helpful to me, because that wasn't something I had known about before. Displaying a license and really being able to brand shops as legitimate OCM licensed shops will be important and helpful. And then there will also need to be an education campaign. There's so many education campaigns in terms of public education that need to happen, or, around, particularly around youth usage, I think, around youth usage of cannabis, but also there will need to be one obviously around, around the branding so that people will know to identify that which is OCM branded. I'll leave it right there though, because I know you've got questions waiting.
Okay, do you want to call on the other people and then I'll come
Yeah,
back?
so I saw Judy lowered her hand. If you want to re-ask your question, please raise it again. Until then, let's turn to Mohit.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for being here, Brad and Keisha. So 3 questions, I think. One is, what is the role of OCM in the licensing of the sale for CBD? I think I'm understanding the role here on the THC side of the house in terms of the 9 license types and the chain of control and seed to sale, et cetera. But the CBD side is new to me, so we'd love to learn a little bit more there. So that's number 1. Number 2, is there anything that we in the community board should have in mind when it comes to the expungement side of the law? And number 3, what are some best practices you've seen now across community boards as they are all kind of preparing for the implementation of MRTA? So in regards particularly to citing, but in any other way?
So I think hop in if I can on the latter 2. I don't have as much depth on the CBD OCM role. I know that OCM is licensing CBD sales as well, but I don't have as much depth there. So I'll just hop to expungement. I do not believe that there is a role for the community boards in the expungement process. I know that there was an automatic expungement that went from OCM to each of the district attorney's office. And so all people who had a prior conviction for a marijuana related charge before March 31st, 2021 should have automatically been expunged. I do not believe that there is any role there. There's actually on OCM's site, there are some links there to access for those who should have been expunged. There are some links there to dig in a little bit, but also particularly because some of them are applying for licenses and they need to have proof that they actually had a conviction. So there's a link there to navigate that process. Brad, feel free to hop in if there's anything else. Do you want to add anything on the expungement side? And then I can hop to the best practices and we can maybe loop back around.
Yeah, I mean, it is ideally everything has been expunged. There is a process, and some offenses were more complicated to expunge than others, where a cannabis offense might not be easily separable from other drug offenses that are not subject to expungement. But that is being handled. It's being handled by the state, and I think the role of the community board would be, if the canary in a coal mine, if you believe that there's issues with expungement based on something that's coming to you, let us know. But that's supposed to be happening. The Division of Criminal Justice Services has records of everybody who's been convicted of anything and is supposed to be able to identify these offenses and just get them cleared automatically. And Keisha, I'll let you go with question number 3, because that's definitely one I can't answer. And then I'll go back to question number 1.
So I'll say that, we were waiting for the regulations that came out today that, we hoped would clarify some of what the expectation will be in terms of exactly what that process will be. How much time will there be for community boards? How will the notice get to them? How much time will they have to turn around these, applications, et cetera. I will say that that Mar Fitzgerald and CB2 has put together some processes that we're in the process of looking over. for her community, for their community board. We're in the process of looking over them as well. They may be something that we recommend for all community boards. It may be that we recommend some tweaks to it, but we're definitely looking to share exactly that, best practices, so that each of you is not having to reinvent the wheel in terms of this process. So look for some, something from us in the next couple of weeks, frankly, in terms of what we would suggest as best practices from the Borough President's Office.
Okay, and then turning to question number one, we've been talking primarily about adult use licenses, but the Office of Cannabis Management actually has 3 areas of responsibility with different licenses in each one. So they've got responsibility now over the medical program. They've got responsibility over what's called the cannabinoid hemp program, which includes CBD. And then they've got responsibility over the adult use program. So they have already issued retail licenses for cannabinoid hemp, in other words, CBD products. These products were being sold prior to OCM's coming into existence, and this has been sort of trying to establish a legally regulated market there. The problems with CBD tend not to be so much that it's not an intoxicating substance, but the quality of the CBD, and particularly the claims made about CBD, are the things that OCM is most interested in regulating with CBD. So you can't make medical claims for CBD without some evidence, and anybody who's followed CBD at all will probably know that it cures every single disease that anyone has ever had if you believe everything you read. So that's some of what's going on with that product. And I'm looking at the web page on this, and there are, they sell tinctures, they sell food, they sell vapes, they sell topicals, ointments that you put on your skin. These are all different kinds of products that are regulated under the cannabinoid hemp retail license.
That's so helpful.
And
On
before
all 3 questions.
Sorry.
Sorry, Rebecca.
I just wanted to add one thing about the expungement side and.
But
how the
Rebecca, can he
community
finish his, sorry, Rebecca, can he finish his question? Yeah. Sorry, Mo.
Yeah, no worries. Just a really quick follow-up on what Brad was saying just there. So, so for CBD, then it sounds like it's primarily kind of on like the manufacturer and distributor kind of side of the house in terms of making sure that claims are factual and the products are safe. It's less of like the more comprehensive kind of regulatory approach that we have toward the ABC law. So it's a little bit less of like the ABC approach we have towards adult use cannabis. So is that a fair?
Yeah. I mean, they do regulate the retail side, but it's not regulated in the way that you're regulating alcohol, or because it's not an intoxicating substance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca, do you want to?
All right, so I think the expungement, what the role of the community board can play, I would say will definitely include. I believe we should pass along any issues.
Well, I would like to finish my questions. That some of it, like Rebecca, I have questions that may add to it. Can we do that at the very end and talk about?
I don't know. I think it's really simple. I think I just want to make sure if we receive a concern or a complaint, we should direct any constituents to a state or their local state representative. Brad, do you think that would be the best?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we would want to identify those problems for OCM, but there are other state agencies involved in this too. So depending on the specific issue, it might go to Division of Criminal Justice Services or something like that.
Yeah, so we can put in the minutes that, if you have concerns, we can reach out to your state electeds directly, or we can assist you in that. And we can, if Mohit, if this is something you want us to raise at the full board meeting, if we don't have an agenda item, we can ask either Will or Russell to add that to their report. I see Judy has her hand up again.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I thought Keisha kind of answered my question, but I'm not sure. Um, if somebody doesn't have a license and is selling cannabis illegally, as perhaps the picture of that store that Barbara showed, what part do our local police play in enforcing the law and getting them to not sell the cannabis or whatever? I don't know what the prohibitions are against these people.
So I did kind of answer it. The local police will partner with OCM once they know that there is an illegal shop operating. Frankly, what I'm hearing from different PDs across the island is that it's been really challenging thus far to to enforce. I think they have not known who is and who's not and who is not legal. This is what I've heard from a couple of constituents, but also some of the police departments. They have a really hard time because they just kind of reopen, or a truck will reappear, etc. But if you're going through OCM, because OCM knows who is and is not legal, then they partner with local law enforcement in order to investigate and then try to shut down the establishments.
Does OCM, do they have a list for, like, our community District 8 of all the stores or places that would be legal in the district? I'm with the East 60s Neighborhood Association. We got a call today about a store that opened on 66th Street between First and the bridge ramp on the south side that's selling cannabis. I don't have the name of it handy. I think the address was 303 East 62nd. Do we have any way of finding out
when there are legal stores, you will absolutely know everyone because you will have approved them. There are no legal stores. If they are selling,
then that
if they
store
are
is
selling
illegal.
cannabis, they are in a legal store. Now, what Keisha said about the police, this is one reason why we're trying to clarify the law, and we need to pass this bill as soon as possible, because the police are reluctant to go after folks for sales because criminal penalty, we reduce criminal penalties. There are still penalties for sale, but they're getting a search warrant to prove that there's a substantial amount of cannabis, testing products, that kind of stuff is very challenging. So that's why we need to clarify the law, but all of these stores should be identified. So if there's a store at 303 East 65th or whatever street that was, 62, that should be reported to the enforcement at OCM so they can coordinate with police. They've been working with the sheriff's office because sometimes the sheriff's office can be helpful. And their job, as Keisha said, is to coordinate with the various law enforcement folks to be effective. And we want to give them, as the legislators, we want to give them some more tools so they can be more effective than they've been up to now.
Okay, thank you very much. Both of you, you've been helpful. It's nice to see you, Brad. It's been a while.
Yes, it has.
Can I go, Rebecca? Is there anybody on the hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we'll turn it back to you.
I'm trying, first of all, with enforcement, will you close down the store if the only thing they're supposed to be selling is marijuana? Would you close down the store, or what would you do with it? And how long will it take? I know that sometimes it takes years until you get rid of a very bad tenant. I know an example that I was talking about. Can this be done very quickly?
The answer is not now. And that's, so to take an example, there's a store on Lexington between 95th and 96th, where they've gotten violations from the city because they're operating an illegal smoke shop. So, they don't have a license to sell smokable products, and a lot of these stores are also illegal smoke shops. Some of the ones they're not issuing new licenses. But that then just starts a process with the city where they have to go before various boards that I'm sure Keisha knows a lot more about than I do. But it's a very long due process. Now, when we pass the law, the thing that will be much easier is they'll be able to search and seize the cannabis. And OCM, I don't think will have the power to put a lock on their door, although others might, other agencies, but their loss of product will make it very difficult for them to sell.
It wouldn't be illegal, though. They're not doing anything criminal or illegal or anything like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, selling cannabis is illegal, and I don't know, I don't know what the exact changes will be, because the bill we passed the Senate last year did actually increase criminal penalties for these kind of sales. I don't know that that's going to be in the final version, but the kinds of things like seizure and really heavy civil penalties are definitely likely to be parts of it, which are other ways to shut down a business if the process is taking longer than we might like.
And just, I think you've answered, but I'm not clear. So a cannabis shop can sell cannabis and some of the equipment. They cannot sell CBD also? Can they, and they cannot sell medical also, that they would be separate entities? Is that correct?
There will eventually be co-located medical facilities, although that's a few years in the future, and those will be very small in number, and they're the companies that already sell medical, or the licensees that already sell medical. I do not believe that they can sell CBD. I'm not really sure that there's a prohibition on having a CBD license and a cannabis license. I'd have to look into that to know.
What type of cannabis? Can they sell brownies and chewables and things like that? Is everything up for sale?
Well, the products will be regulated. They are not allowed to appeal to children. So things like gummies are probably not good, unless they're very ugly gummies that don't look at all appealing to children, are not going to be products. I think they could sell brownies but everything's going to have to be packaged individually. So it's going to be a brownie that's labeled what it is, how much cannabis it has. It's not going to be the brownie that I baked at home and brought into the cannabis.
Okay. I asked about the medical, the legal, the enforcement we've talked about, the different rules that we have. Okay. One of the things that we have, and please, Abraham, if you would chime in and say I'm wrong, with liquor stores is you can't have many on one block. Will there be rules for siting that not only not near schools, not near churches, but also a limited amount per area or anything like that? Any other rules in terms of siting? And particularly
like the 500-foot rule.
Yeah, there isn't a 500-foot rule in the cannabis law, and I got a lot of reading to do on the new regs to see what they put in. I do think that is exactly the kind of thing that one would expect a community board to be weighing in on and saying, there's too many stores here. I'll also say that the OCM, because OCM has a self-interest in these stores succeeding, there is at least some interest in not, they will have some interest in not oversaturating a particular area. So I think those arguments will be powerful, but it is not as clear cut, I will say, as it is in.
No, we certainly have smoke shops very close by.
Yeah, but again, the city has a ban on new smoke shop licenses at this point, is my understanding. But that doesn't mean that they don't continue to open up illegally, which they did before cannabis, and they're certainly doing after cannabis and with a new product often. So that's a problem. And again, with the SLA does seem to be much more effective in preventing like a liquor store that's not licensed from opening up, or a bar that's not licensed from opening up. So hopefully we'll be able to do that more effectively. I think the city just has, there's a lot of due process in the city. That's what seems to be what I've taken out of some of the meetings that I've been in about this.
Okay, I would like to ask one more question, and then I'm going to give you my wish list of things that I would like to see. Support for the retailers. So you said people that have had successful business. What does that mean? Is there a guideline of what that means? I assume you don't have to be the owner of Amazon or something.
No, it is spelled out in some detail in the regulations. The short answer is you had to have run a successful business for 2 years. And
not gone bankrupt or not.
That's probably, it may well be defined it more greatly, but these are the licenses they've actually already started issuing. So if I had applied for one of these licenses, they would have evaluated me on a variety of things. First of all, that I meet the basic qualifications. So they would have to define specifically what they meant by a successful business in deciding that they were granting me a license and not somebody else a license.
And did you say that there's support for paying the rent, for renting the store?
There is significant, so this is one reason why the Dormitory Authority is involved, is there's a public-private financing partnership that involves providing upfront resources, mostly in the form of low-interest loans, although there are some additional forms of support to enable people to pay the rent until they're able to, have a successful business.
And buy the supplies and all of that.
Right. So if I don't have resources now,
like a small business loan, or not a loan though, do you have to pay it back?
In most of these cases, they are going to be business. They are going to be loans.
So it's like the small business loan, the old, I don't know if that still exists.
Yes.
And
they're between, what they said they would be was between $500,000 and $1.5 million per card licensee. Yeah, loan.
And so they would have to pay that back over a certain, and it'd be spelled out how much time and all. So there will be support. I worry that somebody would be given something and then it's not going to succeed, but it sounds like there will be help to succeed.
Yes. The other thing is that DASNY has kind of gone through all the algorithms to find, to find the locations that might be most successful for, such a dispensary, with foot traffic and what have you, all the things that you need to know, to help them be able to identify sites that would be most attractive. So there is a considerable amount of support. And last thing I'll say about that is that while the support has not been specifically outlined, there is now a head. She's the founding director of the cannabis. I forgot what the name of the program is, but the cannabis something in small business services for New York City. So SBS is the New York City agency that is being charged with providing, additional supports and around this industry as a whole. So the person who has been named has been working on kind of developing similar programs specifically for New York City and partnering with OCM, although it has not been spelled out as of yet as to what it is specifically.
And that's for the card members only? That wouldn't be for the murder?
No, it's going to be for the entire industry.
Okay, that's good. And just one last clarification. I think you said it, but I'm not sure. So the cannabis can be sold in cannabis places only, either as retail or maybe like the Amsterdam coffee shop type of things, where it's dedicated just to cannabis. So a bar can't sell it, or even a coffee shop that doesn't sell liquor. If something doesn't sell liquor, can they possibly sell?
In theory, a coffee shop could get a adult use on-premises consumption license. There's nothing that says you can't sell cannabis with food. In fact, it might be a good idea to sell cannabis with food. But
you're not supposed to smoke inside. Is that considered smoking?
Well,
and that's another thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's the smoke-free laws apply. So they would have to either have an outdoor space or not use smokable products. Because again, there are many different ways to consume
that's right.
cannabis these days. But yes, the only ban is you can't have alcohol, you can't sell alcohol and cannabis at the same place.
And one last question, and then I want to go through it. CBD, I see every place selling CBD, I've seen it in like beauty salons and all of that in their window, they say it. Is that legal? Do you think they all have a right to it, or who cares? Or, since it's not a very serious product, or?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is a lot of these places are not licensed.
And certainly the people out on the street that sell it and so on. Come to 86th Street, you can buy a lot of it.
I just have two really quick questions, and then we have a hand up from Boaz, a member of the public. The first is a request of you, Brad. I hope you'll keep us updated on Liz Kruger's legislation when the session starts. I would love us to be able to have a resolution supporting the passage of that. And then we can also ask Russell to make sure that's addressed at the Manhattan Borough Board, if that's something, Keisha, you'd be interested in. And then the second is just a request to Keisha about, I know you said the chair of CB2, I think, is working on best practices, but I know this committee, and Abraham, I hope I can speak on your behalf as co-chair of Street Life, we would love to be involved in helping identify any best practices, and we'd be more than happy to find a time to speak with you as well.
Well, I do have a couple of wish lists along the way that may add to it, but Boaz, can we unmute Boaz?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey guys, interesting conversation. I learned a lot. Thank you.
What does Israel have? Do you know what is
in Israel?
Yeah.
In Israel, it's there are no shops. You cannot buy it in shop, but the police are not focusing on
so it's like we were. Okay.
Yeah. So at least from what I see in Upper East Side, they sell it everywhere, right? And I think that if you guys decided to legalize it, at least try to give the permit to all those stores. So at least the city, the state, whoever gets the money from the tax will start getting the money from the tax, and the product will be the good product, not something fishy. And from enforcement perspective, a focus on enforcing smoke-free zones in the parks, next to the benches, because it has, I don't smoke, but it has the smoke has a very strong smell. So at least like we have all kind of as part of the open streets, we have like a closed street where people sit on the benches and so on. So maybe make them like a free smoke zones, so people can sit down and it will be a focus on the enforcement over there. But from regarding the stores, I think it's already, the cat is out of the bag. Just try to go to all the stores, give them a ticket, and put them in give them the permit so they can sell. So the product will be the product that you guys are. Have the kosher stamp or whatever, and so and continue from there. But yeah, thank you.
I was just bringing up another important part. I think there's really almost like three parts to this. One is that we're doing who can sell it, but another one is who can use it and when. And we haven't talked about those rules much at all. So I think that would, and the other is just what is the medical. I mean, with Tisha and I were handing out turkeys also, and we talked about the medical parts of it. That the analysis of the medical parts is a third part of a discussion. So this has really been the retail. I think I don't know if there's been any discussion about rules about where it can be smoked or used at all, and by whom, and so on. Are there laws about that?
Anybody can use it if you're 21 or older. If you're not
Any
21 or older,
place.
and but localities can ban smoking anywhere that they ban cigarette smoking. So you can't have cannabis specific rules, but for instance, cigarette smoking is banned in public parks. That means cannabis smoking is banned in public parks, not particularly effectively, as anybody who has used a public park knows. But and obviously one of the things about cannabis is it's a lot, you smell it a lot more than cigarettes. So people do notice that people, you might not, I smell the cigarettes too, but I certainly notice the cannabis in lots of locations.
And what's disturbing for me, if you pass by a group of Amazon people working with it, you smell it. So does that mean while they're working or driving or anything else that there's use going on?
Well, you're not allowed to smoke at work.
Nor while driving.
Nor while driving. Yes, that's
Not allowed, and is it happening?
Those are other locations that are
Yeah.
not
So
allowed.
basically, smoking and marijuana will be, but that doesn't prevent eating. So you could certainly bring a brownie to the park, I assume. Am I right?
You can, yeah, you can bring about the brownie to the park. You can't bring a brownie in your car and eat it, and you can't bring your brownie to work and eat it. But
Okay. I have a couple of wish lists, and others can please go through. First of all, I would like the licensee to be very prevalent, and I would like one of the things that maybe we can do as a community board or others is to make it very plain to people that only go into licensed places. I am somebody that didn't care whether it was legal or not, but one of the reasons I was for it, I was once in the emergency room with somebody a few years ago, and Randall's Island had one of their rock concerts, and the person couldn't get his CT scan for hours because bodies were coming in from illegal use of the drugs that were going on there. And I just feel that if we legalize it, there is a safety, as was brought up, somebody did bring it up, there is a safety issue. So I think that public a PDA of saying only go, if you want to, only go to the legal places will be better. Nobody goes to somebody's basement to get liquor anymore. You know, people know to go use liquor, I think, in a more responsible way. So that's one of my things, is a PDA licensing to make it more so. I also wonder if there's a way of cracking down sooner. Our city is obnoxiously slow at following rules, really bad tenants. And if somebody's illegal and they're not shut down, that means they're continuing doing the work and possibly harming our community. And I'm wondering if we can do something to say that's another wish list I have, that the process is sped up and really very rapid. Is that possible, do you think? Both of you?
I think it will get a lot easier if we pass our bill early next session. So me keeping you informed about what's going on with our bill is.
Can you tell us exactly what the bill is saying?
Okay, so the bill does a number of things. It adds power to the tax department to enact penalties that they didn't feel that they could, though we think they can, but that's just a dispute. It gives the OCM the power to seize products as well as conduct regulatory inspections of both vehicles and places. It increases criminal penalties for selling unlicensed cannabis from a location that has been used for that purpose. And again, the issue really is getting to language that can pass both houses of the legislature. So the final bill is not going to be, I can give you the bill number, but it's the current bill is S9452, but that will not be the language that is in the final bill. So that, and I'm hoping that we will actually know what that language will be before the end of the year, with the goal of getting something passed very early next session. Because I think the biggest power that this will give is it will empower OCM to do what right now the sheriff can go in and seize untaxed tobacco products. And we want them to be able to do exactly the same thing with cannabis with OCM having full, search and seize powers that they don't fully have now. And I think that will get around some of the trying to shut down these places because they're illegal smoke shops, which is just, it's not getting at the heart of the matter.
The other of my wish list, and Brad, I hope you're right, and Keisha, I know you'll agree with this, is that every license should come in front of the community board, in front of Abraham's committee, to say whether it should be passed or not, just like a liquor license is. And then hopefully and I know our committee, I think, really is sensible in terms of its yeas and nays along the way, and that we're listened to. So I hope that that's the case, and would be another one of my wish lists. And another one of my wish lists is a control over what, and I don't know how this can be, but the way that the store will look, because I think that the example I gave is just, I just couldn't, I really thought without reading the sign that it was going to be a candy store. It looks just like a candy store that my grandkids would love, my little grandkids would love to go into and see. And that's a worrisome thing also.
Yeah. And just to be clear, the first stores are all basically being designed. There's going to be sort of a store in a box model. And I can assure you they're not going to look like this.
And this isn't even really showing it. I'm a terrible photographer and I didn't get the full impact of what it looks like. So, that's that. Does anybody else have wish lists that maybe? Rebecca? Yeah.
I think while we wait to see if anyone else has something to add to the wish list, that was a perfect segue to kind of the next part of the conversation about what we can do as a community board. Abraham, I hope you will volunteer your committee to approve all licenses. And I think we're allowed to have stipulations for our board's approval of any type of license. And I think signage, this concern you're raising, is something we can, if Abraham agrees, is something that we can, make a list as a stipulation for our support.
I didn't think of asking the zoning committee. The zoning committee deals with signing, and I think I may call up the two co-chairs of zoning and see if this is something they'd be interested in. I don't know if you and Abraham, if you agree.
Yeah, no, I think it's always great to get that input.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only other thing, while we kind of brainstorm ideas offline, I think the other thing we can think about doing is maybe having a list. Oh, I see Mohit raised his hand. I'll just finish my point quickly. I think we should have a list that the community board puts together and is listed on both, the Street Life committee page and our committee page about all the licensed establishments as we kind of move forward in the process. I think that would be a helpful
I think that's very
helpful contribution we could make.
Mohit?
All right, let's unmute that.
Yeah, so just on this topic of what the community board should be doing, I attended the MBPO cannabis training last week, and
Your
one
head
takeaway.
swimming like mine was. My head was swimming after that one with all the different.
I may have a bit more background in cannabis regulatory affairs than you may, Barbara.
Okay.
I can talk to you about that offline. But in any case, one of the takeaways I had is that the community board should use the next 60 days to review the regs and submit new substantive comment, because we are an organization that's primarily oriented around issues of zoning and siting, and so we should really review the regs in that light and provide them our feedback.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like your wish list, Barbara. While we want to voice it here and then kind of repeat it, I think that the key opportunities that we can get those kind of in writing and submit them during this comment period and have them come from the board, so we have a comprehensive, wish list and have our voice heard there and documented, so that we can hopefully have some influence as to what the final regs will look like.
That's great. Do we actually go to it? How do we do this? Where do we go? Is there just a website to put it on? Is there going to be actual meetings?
There will be a comment period. During the comment period, you can submit questions or comments, suggestions through the OCM website. There actually, I think it's through there'll be a link on the OCM website to the state register or whatever it's called to do that. And so, yeah, if the board came up with 15 suggestions about what should happen, there's a process to submit that.
Abraham, is this something you'd be willing to put on your next committee agenda? I think when it comes to licenses and applications like this, the public is accustomed to raising their concerns and questions at your meeting. So I think that might be a good next step we could take.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to put that on the agenda.
Can I ask both of Keisha and Brad if you feel that the list of wish lists were good, were enough, something you could suggest and would urge us to do?
I think that there's very reasonable things to be asking for. I mean, I'm sure there are many other things you could ask for, but those strike me as perfectly reasonable.
Would you want us to pass a resolution to support the senator's bill? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, but you may want to wait until we actually know what the bill says. The bill, you could support our bill, but the goal is to support the bill that's actually going to pass
I think it makes more sense to wait till we have a little bit more info. And if you just reach out to us, we'll make sure to try and get a committee date as close to when you reach out as possible so that we can voice our support. And as I said before, we'll ask our chair to bring it up during the Manhattan Borough Board so that hopefully we can get a strong community board support for this legislation.
Brad, we should probably have another committee meeting to discuss more definitive things. Do you think that would be January? Or is January too soon?
No, January is probably good. I mean, that's when the legislature will go back to session. And, maybe we'll pass it before you get around to doing your reso of support, but you're not going to mind that.
Because it would be passed in the Senate, but not necessarily the Assembly.
No, the goal, we already passed it once in the Senate. So the goal is to get to an agreement. And I know that that's being worked on as we speak, where both houses are comfortable with the bill, the governor is comfortable with the bill, and OCM thinks that the bill will actually enable them to do what they want to do.
That would be great.
I have reason to be optimistic that we are getting to that point.
And I hate to get political, but January is going to be different than now. You think that things will go through and there won't be any opposition?
Yeah, there's not a significant, this legislation will be non-controversial with members, I think, if we can just get the language to the right place. I think everybody is concerned about these stores. Certainly senators, assembly members are all hearing about these illegal stores and we want to get them shut down. So.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And besides, thank you to our two speakers to come. My head is less spinning today, I will say. I feel it's more hope that we'll have a process like the liquor stores and the bars and all of that work very well in our community.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just again, keep us in the loop. We have a lot of active board members, but also committee co-chairs who can help think of ways as we, come up with best practices.
We have so many meetings we want. Abraham, maybe we'll talk about, maybe you'll have a separate meeting with it. I don't know. We'll work together.
We'll find something, but yeah, I mean, I'll definitely put it on the agenda for the next street life so that there's definitely input and we can kind of compile a good list and then ultimately have a comprehensive document to send for the comment.
Great. That's wonderful. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for all your questions. So
many of my friends that I
thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you all for coming.
All right, is there a motion to?
Can I make one comment? I think a friend of mine who lives in Boston is there, and I visited Boston, and I was very surprised to see advertisement for delivery service, but I guess we won't be so surprised after a while. I guess we'll see the same signs here. I actually took a picture because I thought it was so strange to see these advertisements for delivery service of cannabis. But I guess that's in the future,
last-
right?
Yeah, well, cannabis delivery is not a new thing. It's been going on in New York for a very, very long time. So
So my
if we
doorman
want to-
says.
if we want to replace the way it's working now with legal cannabis delivery, we need to actually have that option.
And I mean,
Thank you.
we have banned in New York State, right, the delivery of vaping products. So I'd be interested to see how those kind of two conversations go together. If no one has any new or old business to raise, we would welcome a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
So moved.
Goodbye, everybody. Have a great
Second.
Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for both, Brad, and for both of you for coming.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Robert.